exactly every move they make. That's why they're close,
Yeah.
right? So the thing was to send Baggio out of the Congregation for Bishops to Venice. So the Holy Father calls Baggio. Now, and you've got to imagine that Baggio got wind of this, okay? Because things don't happen in the Vatican without, you've got people running around spying and everything else. It's incredible. The Holy Father picks up the phone, John Paul the First, and calls Baggio directly in the Congregation for Bishops and said, I would like to see you. And Baggio answers him that he was busy. Right? Now, you've got to have, pardon me, but you've got to have a pair to be able to say to the Pope, excuse me, I'm busy.
Yeah.
You know, what's the matter with you? I've got things to do. And this man, this humble man said, then this afternoon, still busy. He said, then this evening. He said, you tell me you're going to be busy after 8 o'clock at night? What are you busy with 8 o'clock at night, right? And so Baggio had to go, and he did go. He arrived at 8 o'clock at night. Baggio entered the papal apartments, sat down, started talking to the Pope, and it was proposed, one supposes, because that's the reason he was called there, that he take Venice. Baggio evidently didn't like this because he started screaming, he started yelling at the Pope. There are 2 Swiss guards who attested to this, who were standing right outside the door. Didn't hear what was being said, but they heard the loud voice of Baggio. That went on and on and on, and he refused. He wasn't going anywhere. Who knows what he said to the Pope and what insulting things he said to him. You've got to remember something else too. Just I forgot to mention something else. When Baggio is naming all of the bishops of the world, he's also naming all the cardinals of the world. Because he's the one who decides who's going to be the Archbishop of New York,
right,
the Archbishop of Mexico City, the Archbishop of Quebec, and all of these automatically become cardinals, right? So he had, in that election, he had a lot of friends. And Baggio also spent, listen to this, he spent his vacations, his summer vacations, visiting Asia and Africa, every place that there was a cardinal. He spent 2 or 3 days. So when they came to Rome, they had a friend in Rome.
Right.
No, he was foolish, he was not. Stupid, he was not. Anyway, he refused. He refused. He went out in a huff, slammed the door behind him. The Pope was dead 2 or 3 hours afterwards. Now,
amazing.
What is the initial?
Amazing.
What is the initial? The initial question is, was he murdered? And I gave you the answer of Cardinal Gagnon himself the following Sunday. He said there are many ways to murder a man. I believe, could he have been poisoned? Could he have, yes, any of that is possible. There's no question. Any of that is possible. It's happened in history, let me put it that way. But I believe he had a heart attack. He had a heart attack from the screaming and the yelling. That was it. He was found dead the next morning, but he had been dead for hours. So I think it was the acceleration of heart. And this is the Pope. This man had 30 days to
he was in his 60s. He was in his 60s, wasn't he? John Paul I?
Yes.
Yeah. He was not that old.
No, he was not that old.
Yeah.
He was not that old, and Benelli was 58. Right? So I mean, this is a whole generation of. I mean, there's a lot of controversy about Benelli. People think that he was a liberal. He was not. He was not. He had to deal with Paul VI, who was a Francophile and a liberal. That's it. But he had to deal with him, right? But the Pope, John Paul I, knows he's Pope. He understands who he is. This is a man whose life was devoted to the Holy Father, to the Holy See, right? To be mistreated by a cardinal that way, this is outrageous. This is outrageous. And I'm sure he took that to heart. I'm sure he took that to heart. I'm sure it hurt him tremendously. And I believe that that's what he died of. The fact is that he died. The next day, look, had you had an audience with the Pope in the morning, the day before, and you were being interviewed on television or radio, Dr. Marshall, what do you think? What's your opinion of the death of the Pope? And you would say, well, I saw him yesterday morning. He looked fine to me. This and that, right? That would be your reaction, right? As a matter of fact, Vatican Radio was interviewing people in St. Peter's Square. And one of them was Cardinal Colombo, who they got an interview from him, and he said, I was with the Holy Father last week. And he looked perfectly healthy to me. He was this, that, and the other thing. Well, they get Baggio, who's going out of the Congregation for Bishops, and ask him, Your Eminence, your reaction to the Holy Father's death. Baggio just answers, Baggio didn't say, I was the last man to see him alive. No, of course not. But he could have said anything. The only thing he did say was, "Che corpo." What a blow.
What did he say? What did he say?
Che corpo.
Oh.
What a blow. What a shock. And grumbled and this is it. That was his reaction.
Even though 12 hours before he was screaming at the man.
That's right. That's right. That's right. He forgot to mention that.
Right.
Anyway, Gagnon had already heard about the argument when I asked him, was the Pope murdered? And that's when he answered, there are many ways of murdering someone, right? You don't have to poison, or you don't have to have a knife, you don't have to have a gun. There are many ways of doing it. And one of the things, this is going to sound absolutely off the wall, but it doesn't matter. I've been accused of being off the wall before. When I was a kid, I saw an Alfred Hitchcock movie. And I wish I could remember the name of it. I never can, but it's about a barber in a small town who was accused by the mayor of having had an affair with this woman and having murdered the woman. And the barber was taken to prison and executed, right? Next scene, 20 years later, a young man comes into town. He's a barber, goes to the barber shop, and fine, he's there. One day, and he's waiting, he just seemed anxious. It was played by Peter Fonda, by the way. Peter Fonda played the part. One day, the mayor comes in for a haircut and a shave into the barber shop. The older barber leaves, the newer barber puts the towels on the man's face and everything else, and then draws the shades and puts the close sign on. And he starts talking to the mayor. The mayor was the one who had had the affair with the woman and who had killed the man 20 years before and him executed. It turns out that the new barber, is the son of the man who was executed, right? And so while he's shaving the mayor, he's telling him what he's going to do to him. Because he killed his father, and his father was innocent, Mr. Mayor, just as you and I both know. And he's shaving him, and he's under his throat with the razor. The mayor has a heart attack and dies. The story. Alfred Hitchcock was a genius with these things.
He was Catholic.
That's how he killed him.
Right.
He didn't have to slit his throat. That's what I'm saying. There are many ways of killing a man. And the mayor had a heart attack. And that's the first thing that I thought about when Cardinal Gagnon came out with that. So that's the story. That's the story of murder in the 33rd degree. 33rd degree, of course, being the Masonic participation in the whole thing. Taylor, where you and I are very much in agreement. I've read your book. I read your book twice. I read your book twice, and then I bought it on audio, and I listened to it again. I agree with everything you're saying. What you're except for the Baggio part. You have to insert that. Okay.
Okay.
Very important.
Yeah.
What you're saying is exactly what we're living today. The reason, and I'm not, we say in Spanish, I'm not putting cream on your tacos here. I'm not just complimenting you because it's a good thing to do politically. I'm telling you, your book is very good. It's about the infiltration that happened in the church strongly since the Second Vatican Council, all through the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, right? This really happened. There was a major infiltration. I just explained the part of the bishops remaking the entire episcopacy of the world radically overnight. That happened, right? You've got all of these changes that happened. Nobody's being called in on serious charges, and there were serious charges. Nothing. John Paul II, okay, so we've got another election. The same thing happens. The same thing happens, and Benelli comes up with the next solution, Wojtyła. I give my votes to Wojtyła. Good, good. So, you still got Villot as Secretary of State. John Paul II tells everyone, listen to this, you want to talk about a mistake in policy? Says to everyone in the Roman Curia, everyone in his government, stay right where you are. Stay right where you are. You can imagine Trump saying that to the Biden administration people. Stay right where you are. We're going to work together.
Right.
Right? Okay. Well, he did. He confirmed Villot as Secretary of State. Baggio still continued in the Congregation for Bishops. It's as if nothing happened. Benelli goes to see him and says, Holy Father. Now, this was Benelli's candidate. Right? Benelli says, Holy Father, Benelli is now the Cardinal of Florence. He said, you have to call in Gagnon and get his report and read his report. Housekeeping needs to be done immediately. Immediately. Well, I'm planning a trip to Mexico. Yeah. Well, you're planning a trip to Mexico. I don't want to get on the man's case, but here's the thing. John Paul II made 104 trips during his pontificate. What people don't realize is that each one of those trips cost 2 and 3 months of preparation. He didn't just get on a plane and start going. He wanted to know who is the bishop of this place, who is the bishop of that place, how many dioceses there are, seminaries, hospital, He wanted to know everything, and many of the times learn to give speeches in a foreign language, a language he didn't know, right? All of this. So his whole world were those trips. And I'll give him this. I'm sure that he was convinced that what he was doing was God's will, and he was out to evangelize the world. He was to call the world to Christ. I believe he believed that. The problem was that while the cat's away, the mice, or in this case, rats, will play. And they certainly did. Now, the good thing was, I shouldn't say the good thing was, let me just say what happened. Cardinal Villot died. He had lung cancer. The man smoked. Do you know what those French cigarettes, Gauloise?
No.
I mean, you could die. You could die just from being in the presence. The Secretary of State, the times that I had to go to the Secretary of State, you knew exactly where Villot was.
Yeah.
He was a chain smoker, and he smoked those. They're so heavily perfumed. They're obnoxious. They're horrible. Gauloise. Anyway, he died of lung cancer.
I'm going to put Villot on the screen. There he is. There's Cardinal Villot. Can you see him, Father?
There he is. I can see him. Yes. Yes. We finally have Villot between us.
Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful? This is what we have in common. Isn't that lovely?
He was French.
Anyway.
Right? He was
very French, very French. Paul VI had a fascination for French philosophy, for the French language, everything French. Anyway, so this was Paul VI, Secretary of State, and he was, as I say, just not a nice man, and you didn't want to cross him. You didn't want to cross him. Anyway, Cardinal Gagnon, or Archbishop Gagnon, brought up the dossier again to John Paul II. And he said, Holy Father, you must change Baggio from the Congregation of Bishops immediately and your Secretary of State. Well, the Pope decided not to change the Secretary of State because he was in the last stages of cancer. So he wanted him to die with a certain dignity, and he didn't want him to be stressed with that. So when he died, the Pope named Casaroli to succeed Villot rather than Benelli.
Big mistake.
Big mistake. And he continued on his travels. Well, they were fine. They ran the entire show. Baggio continued just as before, and it's almost like, nah. You're not getting me. I'm staying right where I am.
So
right?
so Baggio is appointing bishops.
Oh, yeah.
Paul the
And he
Sixth,
continues.
John Paul I, John Paul II, and we're getting a rotten episcopal.
A rotten bunch. Yes, absolutely.
And Father, may I ask you one question about
worldwide, Taylor.
Yeah. May I ask you one question about Villot?
Not just here. Pardon me?
Can I ask you about Villot? There's one question I have about Villot before we move on from. So in my research, and I kind of touched on it in Infiltration, but it said that the morning after John Paul I died, Villot, Cardinal Villot, the Secretary of State, arrived early, rearranged the room, perhaps took things from the room, and ordered John Paul I to be embalmed before the autopsy.
Yeah, I believe that.
That's all. So,
Yes,
if that's the case, Cardinal Villot arriving, or how did he know to arrive early and go? And he told the nuns, "Don't come in here." He shut them out. How did he know to get there early? Why did he rearrange things? And then why did he order a rapid fire embalmment? That to me is a little bit more than he just had a heart attack. That to me sounds like some foul play.
Could be. But he was the first person that the nuns would have called. They said it was McGee and this and the other thing, but they would have called Villot immediately to get there. That he rearranged things, yes he did. That he took papers that were there, yes he did.
Yeah.
What those papers were, I give you my guess on it. I don't know,
Right.
but I'm willing to guess pretty solidly that it was the Gagnon suggestions for replacements and changes in the Curia. Villot, who was Villot's best friend among the cardinals? Cardinal Baggio. they were absolute best friends. They understood each other tremendously well. And Villot was the one who got Baggio the job as to name all of the bishops. So these people know the game they're playing. They know the game they're playing, the stakes that are there. So Gagnon asks me again, can we go see Pope John Paul II? I have an audience with him tomorrow. Again, to bring this dossier. I don't know how many copies of it he made, right? I said certainly. Well, Pope Paul didn't accept it, so he had only 2 copies, I guess. I drove him there. He went again up in the elevator. I'm waiting for him for the audience with John Paul II. He explained to John Paul II everything. He said that he came down not disappointed. And when he came down the elevator after the audience with the Pope, he came down angry. Gagnon, he was angry. I got out of the car to open up the door for him, and he didn't speak to me. He was so angry he didn't speak to me. We get in the car, we're driving, I said, and? He said, he's not going to do anything. He's not going to do anything. Wow. Is he going to read he said, who knows if he's going to do it? He already has it. He has it, he read it. He knows what it is. I'm suggesting what he has to do. He's not going to do anything. I said, so? He said, so what are you doing tomorrow morning? I said, at your orders. I had classes in the Gregorian, but Gagnon would ask a favor. I'd gladly cut the classes. He said, I want you to take me to the airport. You're going where? He said, I'm resigning. That's it. I've had it.
Wow.
This is enough. That's enough. I can't take any more of this. You're not taking my advice. I've spent 3 years on this whole thing. He said, I'm watching my church being destroyed, and there's nothing I can do. He said, I was happy in the jungles of Colombia before I came here. He was in Colombia. He loved Colombia. He said, I'll go back to the jungles. He said, and preach on the Sacred Heart of Jesus. He gave retreats to small villages. He said, let me do that. He said, I can't deal with this jungle anymore. I drove him to the airport, but before I drove him to the airport, he said, can we go by, he said, I want you to swing by the Vatican. And we got there, and again, Cortilius Andamus, so he said, here, take this letter up to Cardinal Villot. It's my resignation.
Wow.
I said, I'm dressed in a blue jacket and in civvies, right? Because it was a free day from school. I think it was a Thursday or something. So I'm not dressed in a collar or anything else to go up to the Secretary of State. Right? He said, just go. He said, and he said that you're not dressed in a collar. That'll show you. You'll be able to show them the dignity you have for them. You can show them your opinion of them, the way you're dressed. Just go. Well, I went up. I gave the letter. I said, is Cardinal Villot, and the man at the receptionist was a very antipatico type. No, His Eminence is busy, and you have to have an appointment. I said, fine. Would you give this to His Eminence? But I got halfway down the corridor. La Galleria. And from the door, I hear Villot, you! I turned around, it's only me. I said, yes, me? He said, you, come here. Not please, thank you, no, just, now.
Right.
I went back, I took my time though. I walked back, I didn't run. I said, yes, Eminence, yes, what is it? He said, where is Gagnon? I said, right there. He's in my car in the Cortile. You tell him to get up here right now. I said, no. You can tell him if you want to. Why don't you go down and talk to him? I'm not going to go down and order him up. You want to talk to him, you go down and talk to him. He said, I'm telling you to go down and talk. I said, I'm telling you no. And I turned and walked out. And I said, I hope he doesn't recognize you, because I was still working at the information office. I said, I hope he thinks I'm just, Joe Schlink the midget or something that coming off the street. But anyway, I got back down to the car and I told Gagnon, and Gagnon said, hit it, let's go. So I drove him to the airport. He got out at the airport, had his ticket and everything else, left me the keys to his car, and that's it. Didn't see him at all for years. No one knew where he was. Oh, let me not forget this. Very important. Gagnon told John Paul II, he said, you've got a problem with the Vatican Bank. It's going to implode. He said, I have the documentation here. You have a problem with the Vatican Bank. This is Marcinkus, who was the head of the bank.
Oh, Marcinkus.
I've got to tell you, Taylor, more than an evil man, he wasn't. He was kind of dumb.
Well, they called him the gorilla.
Yeah, well, there you go, Magilla Gorilla. But he wasn't the brightest bulb in the pack. He really wasn't. And when you have that, plus you have an arrogance, that's a deadly combination.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got a guy. My uncle, who was city attorney of Miami, came to Rome a couple times, and I had to take him to the Vatican Bank to cash a check. In those days, it was a big deal, a personal check. So I said, would you like to meet Bishop Marcinkus? He's in his office right here. He said, yes, I'd like to meet him. We walked in. It sounds like I'm making this up. The man is with his feet on top of his desk, crossed, right, smoking a cigar. This is the president, the head of the Vatican Bank. I mean, why
what
would
bankers
you want
do.
to like that? Why? Why? You know, it's like a Thurston Howell the third or something. All loving. You know, it's unbelievable. So, anyway, he made a total mess out of the whole thing. But who was behind the total mess? The Italian Freemasons. Propaganda due.
Yeah.
And when people think you're making this up, these people are in prison. I think some of them still. Why are they in prison? For a Freemasonry plot against the Vatican finances.
Right.
That's the official reason. And P2, Propaganda Due, was outlawed officially in Italy after this case.
That's right.
Now, this is Freemasonry. Gagnon told this to the Pope. You have Freemasons planning to topple Vatican finances. He said, all right. He said, this'll get you. If that didn't get you, this'll get you. There's a plot against your life, Holy Father. There's a plot against your life from the East, from the Eastern Bloc. He said, I know it. It's in the documentation. Gagnon knew there was a little bit of I don't know if it wasn't blasphemous, but it's they said that Gagnon knew as much as the Holy Ghost to what was going on. He investigated everything. Right? He said, "There's a plot against your life." And I said, "And what did the Holy Father say?" He said, "Who would want to kill the Pope?" Gagnon said, he said, I've got a list longer than my arm. What you've done, but the people who work for you. You can start there. Anyway, Gagnon left. When the Holy Father, the next year, before that, it wasn't even a year, the Vatican Bank scandal exploded. Mm-hmm. Why did it explode? Because nothing was done to prevent it. Right. It could have been taken care of. On the 13th of May, 1981.
Angel, I don't expecting this. It's going to be part 3. There will be part 3. Okay? About Taylor Marshall and Father Charles Moore. So, let's wait, okay? Watch part 3.